Exciting session here today. We have Ash from Anthropic, and just maybe just starting off with Anthropic itself. This has been one of the greatest ramps. We were talking about this backstage, right? In terms of just the sheer scale of change that we're seeing with AI and with Anthropic. And you guys went from what was 1.8 billion last year to what is it, 55 billion?
Right around, somewhere around there.
So, when you're talking about growth, right? I mean, that's a scale that, has just been absolutely mind-boggling. But maybe just as an introduction, and maybe for the audience, maybe you could talk about what does Anthropic actually do? And what is it, the work you're doing different from what, there's a lot of obviously headlines about AI, but what would you like to put out there in terms of what Anthropic does?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and get to meet so many lovely people in the audience. I think the headline for what Anthropic is we're an AI safety and research company. And I choose the ordering of the words here deliberately because, we feel that what happened was in 2021, a group of AI researchers started to see the beginnings of something that they thought was going to be world-changing and hopefully for the better. But they thought things were going to happen very fast. When you look at the scaling curve of how fast these models had been getting better up until that point, and how fast things would go from there if the fundamental kind of like not laws of physics, but the curve calculations proved to be right, this was going to get very, very capable. These models were going to get very, very capable very, very quickly. So they spun off and started this company as a way to bring AI into the world responsibly. And there are a few important principles that we built kind of the company around. One of the principles that really drew me to the company almost 3 years ago was this idea of constitutional AI, where a lot of the labs at that time were basically training these models and making them get smarter and more capable by giving them essentially feedback around, hey, this was a good response, this was a bad response, thumbs up, thumbs down, or this response was better than this response. These are generally how models were getting trained. Anthropic took a different approach, where instead of, well, not just instead of that, but in addition to doing that sort of training, they also gave our Claude models a set of principles to follow. Being helpful, being honest, and being harmless were kind of like the main theme around the principles that we've given the model. So as over time, as these models have become more capable, having that set of principles has really made Anthropic stand out in terms of both capability, accuracy, but also integrity and alignment of the models to human values. In addition to that, we've also published a ton on interpretability, trying to peek inside the brain of these models, right? Like Anthropic has really led the way here, and interpretability is turning out to have some commercially viable use cases as well. But it was a big bet for the company that this was the right thing to do. As models get smarter, we want to be able to understand how they are thinking so that we can troubleshoot if need be. And the final thing I would say that really kind of sets Anthropic apart is we published from the early days what we call the Responsible Scaling Policy, or RSP. And you can think of this as essentially a series of tripwires, where as these models start to get more capable, certain safeguards have to be put in place by us in the world in order for us to release those models. And you've seen this happen in recent weeks and months this year, but this was a really important part of bringing AI into the world safely. And what's interesting about AI is it's actually not that different from the automotive industry, right? Like safety engineering it's not a tax on innovation. It's part of the process itself. I mean, no one here would put their family in a car that hasn't gone through, crash testing, things like graduated recalls or rollouts and recalls. These are part of the industry, and for AI, we have to have those as well. So, this has made us a very attractive company for bringing in researchers who are very good, who want to do the right thing, but also the inverse of risk. And the inverse of safety is liability, right? So we've had a lot of success working with enterprises who view us as the best option, not just because we have the best models that are the most capable, but because our models are always the most aligned, they're the least jailbreakable, and generally speaking, they are very helpful, honest, and harmless.
Okay. So, maybe leading on from that, you handle go-to-market for cybersecurity at AI Lab, and it's a role that didn't even exist a couple of years ago.
Right.
So what is that? What can you tell us about how the models are now doing with cybersecurity, and how does that curve look like from where you sit? And for the industry, this is also extremely relevant because there was a major cyber incident a couple of years ago. I think you and I have talked about that. And obviously, with all these new tools, this is a particularly sensitive thing for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think the idea of like a cybersecurity business leader for AI 3 years ago would have been a punchline, right? They like, what are you gonna? It's like people asking ChatGPT how to build a recipe. What's to secure about that? But the world has changed a ton over the last few years, and around this time last year, a little maybe Q1 of 2025. The researchers at Anthropic started to notice that as these models were starting to get really capable, really good at coding, right? Cybersecurity is very coding adjacent, right? It's a coding with a few extra steps. But if these models can think and execute, reason really well in code, they're going to become, as they become more intelligent, very capable at offensive and defensive cybersecurity tasks. And we started to see that late last year, around the time we rolled out, I would say, Sonnet 4.0, I believe, was a model where, wow, this thing started to win hackathons. This thing started to show that it could behave not just like a model that can identify patterns and find and exploit things, but like a researcher, a security researcher that can do a lot. And since then, I mean, in the news, I feel like you can hardly miss a headline at this point with AI and all of the stuff AI is capable of doing. We released models earlier this year that started to get even closer to being a world-class researcher. And now what we're seeing is we live in a world where, the 2024 attack that you mentioned, I mean, this thing was massively disruptive, but it happened at human scale and human speed. We're now in a world where these models can execute long-running cybersecurity attack campaigns on their own, uninterrupted. They don't sleep, right? So the attack speed and sophistication that a normal person who knows how to use a mouse and a keyboard has access to makes this a very important inflection point in our industry, and we've got to make sure we get it right. So that's a big part of what we're focused on is decreasing time to identify vulnerabilities for defenders so that they can patch them, remediate them, and that's what we do. We work with a lot of the world's biggest cybersecurity companies, and we help them build solutions with our models, kind of as the intelligence layer to protect users.
So, from where you said, and if you just given the impact that event had, and we actually had some of our own customers reduce to pen and paper at that point in time because the impact was so high. So as you look across industries and building on what you just said in terms of how those models can now execute attacks much more quickly, what should every business take away? How should they protect themselves against this sort of thing?
Yeah, I think there are a few lessons from 2024. And by the way, like every industry we work with has had some version of this issue, right? Whether it's telecom or airlines or the financial sector, the automotive industry is no exception. But the patterns we're seeing is that anytime there's concentration risk, anytime an entire industry is mostly or largely using one vendor, that becomes a vulnerability in and of itself, right? Because the scale of the exploit becomes attractive to hackers. And in other words, like your supply chain is your problem. If your vendor's having a bad day, you're having a bad day. So making sure that there's minimizing concentration risk through a variety of mechanisms is one way to kind of solve for this. And the second is like what I talked about earlier, which is like, again, the last attack was human scale and speed. The next one won't. So we got to get ready for to protect ourselves. We got to shore up our defenses. We got to be willing to respond and able to respond quickly. And then, maybe most relevant for some of the folks in this room is like, the third is like, this is a P&L issue, right? Like the cost of preparing for an attack and shoring up your defenses, hardening your systems, pales in comparison to the cost of if an attack happens, right? Like it was a multi-billion-dollar, I believe, issue with many weeks or many months of recovery time for a lot of these rooftops. Like this is something that, when you're thinking about your budgets for security, you should really think with that in mind.
And really the only defense this is, again, given the scale, is having an AI defense as well.
AI is certainly a big part of it, right? But the human in the loop is largely still needed for a lot of cybersecurity tasks. But we were talking about this earlier. It's not just about throwing a model at a problem. It's about having the right systems and architecture, the right foundation, right, for shoring up your defenses. AI has to be a part of the problem, a part of the solution at this point.
And then related to that, earlier this year you did something unusual, right? You had built the most capable model ever seen from a cyber perspective, and but you did not release it at that point in time. You held back, and I think that also goes back to some of what you talked about as the principles of the company. So walk us through that decision. Why did you hold that back, and how have you dealt with that after that?
Yeah. So so earlier this year we were working towards releasing our next generation frontier model, which is now known as Mythos in the news. And as we were doing our usual testing and dog fooding internally, many of us realized this thing was a beast. I was talking to someone, Curtis in the audience, if you're here, earlier about some of the work he was able to do with a variant of this model, like just a really long running task that was like really it was less like tinkering with a coworker about something you want to build and more like, all right, Claude's like, I got this, I'm gonna go do it. Comes back an hour later or whatever, completely done end to end. This model is able to do a lot. And it's not just cybersecurity risk, I mean, it's just fiercely intelligent and capable. But again, attack in the hands of the wrong individual, this can become very destructive. So this is our responsible scaling policy in action, right? This is the set of tripwire was triggered, and we realized we shouldn't release this. We shouldn't release this until we are able to get the safeguards around the model to a place where we felt it was sufficient and ready for the world to be deployed in a safe way. And by the way, no company is prepared to release models like this, right? Like this is the responsible thing to do, but like the world is moving to where more companies are going to have models like this. So time will tell if hopefully others will follow suit. But that was step one. Step two was we worked with our Defender network. So all the world's biggest cybersecurity companies, we gave out $100 million in usage credits. We wanted them to just test the hell out of this thing. In our research, their research, we've found just over 1,000 or so open source projects that we reviewed. I mean, 20 some odd thousand vulnerabilities, many of which were critical or high severity. We were able to patch a lot of things, but this thing extends beyond open source projects. I mean, we're talking about critical infrastructure out in the world, water treatment plants, financial services, banks that are, the world depends on. We just have to get the world ready. And then finally, we wanted to make sure we had a trusted access network and a kind of way to roll things out gradually. So the plan isn't to hold off on releasing these things forever. It's again to get everything ready. And a part of that is, when you look at Opus 4.8, which is our most recent currently generally available model, the cybersecurity safeguards we've been able to add to it and just the intelligence around these kinds of use cases, we feel far more prepared, and the world is far more prepared to be able to make positive use of these things.
So some of the vulnerabilities that you mentioned, right? I saw that it had found a bug that had been sitting around for 27 years, right? And this is very widely used in the industry. Now, in our industry especially, we have a lot of legacy software that is, predates, it certainly predates AI, predates the cloud, frankly predates the internet, and it's on premise. Now, if you're operating on infrastructure like that, then how should you be thinking about that kind of risk?
Yeah, I mean, you should be thinking about it more. I think is
Yes.
the short answer. Yeah, on-premise systems are, first of all, zooming out. The automotive industry, like any enterprise business, is running on layered technology stacks that have been built over decades, right? So I think you're no stranger to the fact that a lot of the technology that businesses use is older. I would say the proportionality is a little different in automotive, where there's proportionally more older software than there is in other industries. Attackers love these things, and because it's harder to shore up defenses on-premise solutions and older solutions, and it's also easier for the users to defer, for the business owners to defer patching and fixing things. So there's vulnerabilities. I mean, there was an Oracle e-business suite hack recently that affected hundreds or thousands of businesses, I believe, and it was on their on-premise solution. So I think just again doing inventory of what systems you're using, and then the three things we think about when I'm talking to my cybersecurity partners is like number one, shadow AI. You want to make sure that people are using AI at your business, whether you like it or not, right? People are going to use a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini.
Upload your Excel into the
Yeah, so that's happening. So centralizing it so that you can govern it is an important first step. A lot of these breaches happen with people feeding things into systems that they should not be feeding things into. So that kind of opens a door, right? It opens a door for hackers to get in. You gotta try to close those off. Number two is securing the AI that you use, and then number three is using AI as a part of your security stack to help you move at machine speed, because attackers are going to increasingly be moving at machine speed.
So then let's maybe talk about the actual user experience and the human in the loop aspect of it, right? Because AI now reasons, right? It thinks. And actually I think that comes as a surprise and a shock to people, is that it's not just that it can process your text, rewrite your text, but it actually can think at this point in time. And one of the principles that we have in here is that when we have the AI decide to take an action, then we want to make sure that you have the appropriate guardrails, you have the audit trails, you have the human in the loop, you have the approval systems in place. What are you seeing in terms of general trends in that area?
Yeah, all of those points are spot on, and guardrails and just safety, operationalizing safety around AI use is really important. Things like role-based access control, the right permissions, AI that can read and not write in certain scenarios, AI that is integrated into only the tooling that you want it to be connected to, having mechanisms to prevent it from connecting to other systems, enablement, training employees to use AI responsibly, and there's just so much to consider here. One of the things when companies are looking, considering which technology to use, which AI vendor to use, or technology to use broadly, is look at their track record, right? In our world, if a company is looking at AI and looking for an AI model provider or AI product provider to use, I always say, look at the model card, look at the system card. What's their red teaming efforts look like? What's their usage policy look like? Does their usage policy have teeth? Do they have a version of a responsible scaling policy? It doesn't have to be verbatim what we do, but something that tells you about how important, how much they value safety, model alignment, and overall honesty of the models.
So maybe you're moving beyond that to the bigger story. What can AI actually do for a business, right? And that's one of the things that I think Anthropic was always enterprise focused, as one of its core principles. And so in terms of the real benefits that it's bringing, the industries that you work with, what are you seeing in terms of real economic value, and also any surprises that you've seen?
I mean, I think for me that when I hear surprise, it's how fast everything is happening. I mean, when I joined Anthropic, it's been 2.5 years. The models were useful for summarizing documents, for writing emails quickly. For developers, autocomplete was useful some of the time. And then very, very quickly, I mean, especially since I would say like early last year, things really just picked up, and models can reason. To your point, they're very capable. They're like a mid-level employee in most fields. Most fields where knowledge work is the work. Like these AI models are just absolutely functioning as mid-level or even senior employees. In cybersecurity, I mean, they're behaving as security researchers that are experts in the field. I would say, where's most of the value coming in? We actually published this thing called the Anthropic Economic Index, it's dry, but if any economists are in the room, you might enjoy it.
It's worth reading. Yeah,
and we talk about a lot of where the value is being created, and which kinds of users, which kinds of jobs are most getting the most value out of AI. Probably doesn't surprise most of you to hear that developers and anyone on the tech side of a business, like product managers, designers, people who are engineering adjacent, those are the roles that are getting the most value. We're having companies that proclaim they're getting, you were saying 10x productivity boost, 100x productivity boost. I mean, if you know how to use these models well, and more people are starting to figure it out, it's massive, absolutely massive what you can do with them. But beyond that, any job that again is centered around kind of a digital experience with a lot of data, document heavy jobs. The legal professions are finding a ton of value in this domain. Customer service. I mean, think about the 11 p.m. customer with a question or like an urgent request. AI that is very capable of helping can be super useful here. So that's where we're seeing a lot of the value come in, but it's pretty much across the board at this point.
So there's also a lot of talk about then, AI agents, right? So, and now that I think is a term that's now so overloaded that means everything to everyone. But so from Anthropic's perspective, what do you think about what's actually the most practical benefit of an AI agent?
I mean, I think maybe just like definitions, because again, it is kind of a fuzzy term at this point. The way I think about agents is that it's not two things, right? The first thing that I think people aren't sure like how to think about agents because they relate it to like a chatbot. So in a chatbot, you ask a chatbot a question, it gives you an answer, and then you go do something with that answer. Summarize this document. Hey, what's the value of this hypotenuse? I don't know why my mind went there, but and it gives you an answer, and you go about your merry way, and you do with it what you will. With an agent, you actually give it work to do on your behalf. The other thing I contrast with an agent is the idea of a workflow. A workflow is like a recipe. It can be a complicated recipe, it could be a simple recipe, but basically you're saying, hey, step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this. Maybe you nest a few if statements in there and you say, if this happens after step 2, do this, otherwise do that. But it's generally formulaic and deterministic. You know what you're gonna get if these different conditions are met along the way. An agent is kind of like a workflow, but instead of telling it the steps of what you want it to do, you tell it the outcome you want it to arrive at. And the agent reasons its way to get there, right? So there's like a feedback loop after step 1, step 2, step 3. The agent will reflect and think about, did this happen? Did that happen? What makes the most sense? What makes the most sense given the CRM data I have a hook into, or the marketing system or dealer management system? It takes all this context and it makes decisions on behalf of the user on its own. As these models have become more powerful and more capable, agentic loops have become tremendous. I mean, again, going back to the Curtis example, letting an agent, letting Claude build an application for you over the course of an hour-long task, and many of our customers are running these things for 12 hours uninterrupted or more. there's a bunch of feedback loops and decisions that the agent makes along the way, but the outcome at this point, because these models are so capable, is pretty amazing what these things can do and build.
So then, translating that into, to get full advantage for an organization, right? There is a mix, and this is especially true for our business, a mix of customer-facing work and a lot of internal repetitive processes. So, and I'm sure that in Anthropic, there's a lot of discussion around, the human, what do human beings do, going forward? What is your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a sales and business development background, so I personally I love like human interaction, right? I get energy from meeting people, speaking with people, solving problems with customers, and in my opinion, like I love having AI in my life because it does a lot of the. You can say it's mundane. I actually enjoy a good early morning session and spreadsheets, like doing a bunch of analysis and modeling. Like it can be fun, but I don't want that to be my whole day. And I'm certainly not very efficient at it. A model that's where it shines, right? Humans and AI are very different and quite complementary in what our skills are. Our skills are, the human judgment, human touch. You can think, I think dealers are generally like relationship businesses that have like paperwork get in the way, right? Like, so in many ways, like AI can automate the mundane parts of the process and paperwork and solve a lot of those problems so that we can spend more of our time with the customer, solving problems, adding value with negotiations and just discussions overall.
Yeah, we had a very good session yesterday. Vice Chair of Goldman Sachs, Rob Kaplan, and he was saying something very similar. Is that he believes that, especially since the cost of these things go down, and you can do much more human interaction, that the value of that will actually increase, and that you'd actually do much more of that.
Absolutely, I think a lot of our employees used to teach their kids like engineering or go study computer science. Now it's like everyone's pushing their children to go like learn sales and to talk to people. Those interpersonal skills are going to just become so much more important.
Actually, speaking of that, anything advice in terms of what people should learn as they're going through this, and what do people need to learn to be, let's say, good at AI?
The AI. I mean, there's a ton of like coursework out there. I mean, YouTube and Khan Academy, all those forums have a ton of amazing content. I'm a big fan of just like getting your hands dirty. It's just start to use these products. You learn things as you go. I'm sure every office has like the nerd who like loves this stuff and can probably teach you a bunch. So like, go talk to him or her. Learn what you can about what they're building and what's possible. But yeah, most importantly, just start to use these things. They're very, very powerful and very intuitive.
Yeah, that is something that I've seen. The same thing I tell my kids as well. Is just go start doing stuff.
Yeah.
So then, if you look at it again from an overall organization perspective, and you work with a lot of companies, what separates organizations that are able to safely and effectively put AI into real-world use versus, again, maybe the people who are using it as a chatbot? So, what are the sorts of things that need to be done to use AI at scale?
Yeah, I think the governance bit is again foundational, right? Like you have to centralize things in order to be able to scale them thoughtfully. Because AI, again, it's here whether we like it or not. We have to adopt it, but how you adopt it is what makes all the difference. So, I talked a little bit about how to evaluate AI vendors, but also technology vendors. Is just like looking at track records. Role-based access control, just having thoughtfulness around what you use and what these systems have access to is huge. I mean, a huge part of what makes AI useful is not just the models themselves, but it's the operating system around it, or the harnesses and like memory, but also like the guardrails, what it can do, cannot do. So I think just putting a lot of thought and consideration into what the operational infrastructure around the use of AI is going to look like, I would say that's absolutely critical.
That might be an interesting, also a little bit of a side topic there, but one of the things that I think made Anthropic different was, a couple of things I can think of. One was that you guys focused on code quite a bit, and then the harness. Maybe you could talk about both of those things. Might be interesting to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. So, I mean, one of when so Anthropic even a year ago, definitely was not the, I mean, maybe it was the market leader in some ways for like API use cases, more developers knew Anthropic, but like I would say the average consumer of AI knew ChatGPT, knew OpenAI. The bet we made early on that has made a huge difference for us is we were going to focus on the enterprise, not the consumer. And there are a few reasons for that, but a big part of I would say, like, if I had to distill it down to like one essential thing, is we felt that businesses are a better customer for a company with our values and our approach than consumers. Because businesses care about safety. They may not know that they care about AI safety in the way we were talking about it, constitutional AI, interpretability research. That's maybe foreign to them, but what they do care about is liability and risk, and keeping that close to zero. So we knew that there would be more value to glean from that kind of customer than a consumer that wants various things. So we focused very intently on our enterprise selling motion, and just we built the model to be great at things like coding, understanding structured data, etc. And as the model started to get really good and became the clear takeaway leader in writing code, that's where everything started to follow. And kind of we had a flywheel, because what we learned, I mean, in retrospect, it's kind of obvious, right? Like, if a model is really good at coding, it can do anything because it can just write programs to solve other things. If a model is really good at coding, it can figure out how to write Python scripts for spreadsheets. It can figure out how to do very hard to figure out structured queries for like Westlaw or CoCounsel as a legal tool, or a financial system of record. So that's the bet that we've made, and again, those advantages have just kind of compounded over the last few years.
Yeah, it's been an amazing run there. So maybe the last one before we wrap up. If there's one thing that you want the audience or any business leader to walk out remembering, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think the bit we said earlier was like capability is like table stakes, right? Like every company is out there. This is happening. The world is changing, and it's going to get weird. But so we got to start using it, but we got to use the technology in the right way. So having a good intake process, qualification process for what you do use, and then operationalizing it thoughtfully. Tekion obviously would be a great partner in helping that. But cloud providers and different systems, everyone's thinking about AI. So getting help along the way is definitely on the table, and we should be doing it.
Yeah, no. Well, Ash, thank you very much. I mean, it's AI is already changing. I mean, it's changing the world. It's absolutely going to change in the process of changing the business we're in. And again, I think security and responsibility. I think the industry got a wake-up call on that, and especially with the changes that we're seeing, it's now essential. And as you said, I think the opportunity is coming from applying AI deliberately in a planned way. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.